Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Mic. USB headset. Yeah, I think it should be. There we go. Okay. Yep. There we go. I believe we have. I believe we have microphone. I believe we have mic now. Sorry for the awful video quality. I will eventually get, my DSLR sitting right over there, but I figured it'd be better to just go live. I am interested, obviously the content is much more important than the quality of, you know, how beautiful I look. If you were sitting here next to me, I would look beautiful, so that's good enough for me. And yeah, so I was actually interested in thinking. I've been thinking recently about motivation and what brings people to be motivated long term in game, and what actually takes them from what separates the people who will succeed long term and persist and actually you know quote unquote make a name for themselves versus the people who will lose faith or try it and quit, right? It's just same thing as with anything, whether it's like learning a saxophone or whatever, right? You might try for a bit, and if you don't get the initial reinforcements or the initial whatever it is you're looking for relatively early, most guys kind of tend to quit, right? So it's the same thing whether you're learning a new sport, whether you're learning a new musical instrument, any of those kinds of things. Immediately you will kind of feel, right, if you're getting the kind of responses that you want and fail. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and a lot of people have these kind of graphs. I don't know if any of you have seen these, but they have like the initial hurdles and the initial successes and like the deep valley of despair, and then like there's all sorts of kind of graphs that people have made about this journey that people have, whether it's through business or through through whatever it is, whatever kind of learning, any kind of path of mastery is basically all the same. The point is, right, you have your initial expectations about what is it going to be like when I set out on this journey, and then you have the kind of initial results that you get back, right? So if, for example, let's say your journey happens to be playing Go, right? Go, obviously the most complicated human-made game basically in existence. Just placing white and black stones, that's it, right? But if you don't know what you're looking at when you're looking at the game of Go, it will look like absolute nonsense to you. And I play a little bit of chess. I play zero Go, so Go to me looks like a foreign language, right? But people who play it at a really high level really understand it, and it's crazy. It's like you'll play one piece over here, one piece over here, one piece over here, one piece over here, and to somebody who doesn't understand anything about the activity, the sport, or the the pursuit, then they will not understand it at all. So what I'm trying to say is essentially, when you're starting out in any sort of pursuit, whether it's Go, whether it's the clarinet, whether it's playing badminton, initially it's very difficult. Everything seems very difficult, especially if you're surrounded by people who are very good at it, right? So, but what happens is initially you either get some initial success or you get a lot of failure, right? And it sort of depends on who you play with, right? Jordan Peterson kind of talks about this a lot, about play. He talks about play a lot, about child's play, and the kind of reinforcement people get when they are young, right? And I thought that was interesting as well, and it does relate to game as well, because if you are young, if you are 3, 4, 5, these are the formative years in your age, of your age, when you're just starting to learn, if is the world outside scary or not, can I continue to advance forward, or do I have to like retreat back and hide, where it's safe? uh, you quickly will learn that people either play games, they're either nice or they're mean, right? And they're nice or they're mean to you based on sort of how you present yourself, right? And so what happens is a fractal. It's like a reactive loop that essentially compounds over time, right? So if you have very good positive formative experiences, right? If you have supportive parents who say, it's okay, we're here, it's safe, but you can go forward, you can step forward boldly and, meet those friends of yours and whatever, whatnot, right? If you have parents who are very supportive and who will support you in that endeavor, then you will gain confidence quickly, and that's an early boost, right? That's like a kickstart when you're quite young, right? And then that changes obviously through middle school, high school. If in high school you happen to be born, let's say you're born the son of a of a football player and a volleyball player, your dad and mom, right? They're both athletes. Well, you're probably going to be pretty, if you're a guy at least, you're probably going to be pretty big, pretty muscular, right? Just naturally, without even doing anything, right? You'll have good genetics, right? And because of that, when even if you were awkward in middle school or whatever it might be, in high school, all of a sudden you'd be like, damn, like you'll start getting looks from left and right. You'll start getting people, paying attention to you, and that will become a foundation of confidence for you, right? So all I'm trying to say is like all of this, when you're starting out on the pursuit of mastery, and a lot of people, when they decide, hey, I want to pick this one thing to focus on, whether it's business, whether it's the clarinet, whether it's Go, whether it's game, right? They pick at a certain time in their life, they decide, hey, I want to do this, and they set off on that task, and they don't, they come into that with all of their biases and all of their upbringing from before, right? And they go into it, they step into it, and it is, it is what it is. They develop at the level they develop. But if you have a lot of initial failures, right, it's going to be really hard to succeed with game, right? It's one thing if you can kind of devote yourself to overcoming those failures and persevering and powering through them, right? Right, and it should be mentioned as well that these things are not. You would think they would overlap, right? You would think that, for example, if you were like an ascetic monk, right, who's capable of like sitting on top of hot coals or something, right, that you would be able to just go and talk to a woman, right? Or if you're a soldier, right, if you're literally capable of running into like a firefight with bullets flying left and right, right? You got your gun. You're literally doing something that's, you could die from, right? You would think, okay, well, this guy has clearly, he's no shortage of bravery, right? He's no shortage of willpower, right? You would think that would apply to this other pursuit, but it doesn't, right? It does not necessarily apply, right? Some mastery does carry over, but a lot doesn't, right? And this is why, for a lot of reasons, the two main pursuits that men can undertake that have the biggest kind of hurdles to mastery are, areas in which you're able to die, so things like fighting, right, or being a soldier, and areas where you have to reproduce, right, and that's basically women or game, right. These two areas in particular are the extreme areas in which they have the highest level of fear associated to them, right? So even something like public speaking, which is one of the most common fears, it doesn't hit as hard as, are you able to reproduce or not, right? Or are you able, or are you able to run into a firefight? Are you able to like throw the grenade over there and like jump in the foxhole or whatever or whatnot, right? So these are the kind of the two ultimate domains for men to, become gladiators, right? Either death or reproduction, right? And as men, those are kind of the two. I don't know if it's like reins that we have to jockey, basically, right? Like if you're riding a horse or something, or it's the balance you have to take, right? And obviously they have a relation as well, right? Like women obviously appreciate men who are reckless and bold and charge forward and are crazy, even they do stupid shit, right? They put themselves in danger, jump off buildings, or fly across cliffs, or whatever it might be, right? So women do respect that in men, that they have both, that they play this dangerous game, right? So one is playing with life and death, and the other is playing with reproduction, right? So, but the more able you are to essentially look death in the face and say, look, I know it's going to be scary, I know it's going to be tricky, and I'm not going to get a lot of initial positive feedback, right? And the more you can persevere through that, the longer term your success will be, right? And the worst thing, whenever I'm coaching guys, I've coached a lot of guys now, obviously, over the years. Whenever I'm coaching guys, the worst possible thing that can happen from the first, 30 minutes that I meet the guy, if I meet the guy and say, all right, let's just, we're not even gonna break anything down. Let's just go talk to this girl. We'll get things going gradually. I'll tell you, I'll adjust as you go in, and I'll make all the adjustments along the way, right? And the worst possible thing that can happen is the guy goes in for the first one approach, maybe two approach, maybe even three approaches, and then they all go well, right? That's actually the absolute worst possible outcome when I'm coaching a guy, is that every set he opens goes well, right? Why is it the worst? Because it's not always going to be like that, right? It's not always going to be like that, and I can't. I need to be there when the guy hits the wall. In other words, right, when he feels the failure, when he feels like at his lowest, I have to be there to bring the floor up. In other words, right, because coaching in a sense is both bringing the ceiling up in terms of what's possible, in terms of for a lot of guys, they don't even believe it's possible. They don't even believe that pulling a girl home within 20 minutes of meeting her is even possible. For a lot of people, this is just like Area 41 alien shit, like Twilight Zone shit, right? Pulling a girl within 20 minutes, what? Like, there's no way that's real, right? Like, did you drug her, or did you, is she just drunk, or, right? Like, people have to explain away the fact that this is possible, right? It's literally looks like magic to these people, right? So that's like raising the ceiling, in the sense that first people have to be able to see, hey, like, this guy can do it, right? And then they think, well, maybe I can do it. If that guy can do it, maybe I can do it, right? And then they slowly start to raise their own ceiling in terms of what they believe is possible for themselves, right? So they're like, okay, well, hey, like, maybe I can't like pull a girl within 20 minutes, but maybe I can go up and talk to her and say hi and maybe get a number, right? That seems maybe sort of within the realm of possibility, right? And so with guys, like, it's both. You have to push up the ceiling, and you have to bring up the floor. So you have to push up what they believe is possible, and you have to bring up the worst possible behavior that they will accept from themselves, right? And the lowest possible behavior people will accept from themselves comes down to habits, right? Comes down to habits, right? Because obviously, even if I coach somebody, it doesn't matter. It only matters where they're at when they're alone, right? When they're cold, naked, and alone, when they're afraid, right? And nobody is there watching them. Nobody is looking over their shoulder. Nobody will snitch on them if they go home and go to sleep, if they go home and watch porn, if they go home and play video games. Nobody's gonna snitch on them. What are they gonna do, right? So it's your lowest common denominator. It's the lowest possible action that you accept from yourself, right? So we have to both bring that up while we bring the highest possible, which is what you even believe is possible for yourself, up at the same time. So both of these kind of go up as like a band or like a frequency together, right? And so the job of a coach is to obviously pull both of those up at the same time. And the ceiling is actually easier to raise than the floor. And what I mean by that is it's easier to show guys that they can exceed their own previous highs, right? It's easier to show them how to best themselves, best their past selves, than it is to raise the low. In other words, to raise their minimum acceptable behavior, right? And this is ultimately at the core of the matter when you're learning any sort of skill of mastery, is that you have to rely on habits, right? And foundational behaviors which take you from, it cannot be about motivation and it cannot be about mood. Mood can be a good, can get you, peak state can get you doing things you'd never believe possible, right? But your habits are what will carry you in the long term, right? So you have to step up and commit on the regular, every day towards the goals that you want to do and you want to achieve, right? And this is ultimately what makes people have mastery, is that their habits will carry them through the points at which the positive reinforcement will like kind of beat them down, right? So the reinforcement is not there, right? Or you're getting rejected. It's raining. It's like snowing. It's like, you lost, I don't know, like $1 million. You feel like shitty as hell. Whatever happens, right? The world is getting you down. A meteor crashed and destroyed your house, right? Your habits are what keep you chugging forward, right? Your habits are what will determine your lowest common denominator baseline activity, your standards, essentially, right? And this is what you have to raise if you want to succeed at game and women long term, right? If you don't want it to be a flash in the pan, a short term type of, maybe you can have a few weeks or a month of success and sleep with some girls who blew your mind and who you've never even expected, whatever, like reach crazy new highs, right? But just like any kind of drug, if you go that high, the come down is pretty hard, right? So the higher you go, you have to bring the floor up with you, and the floor consists of habits, right? And it's not sexy, it's not appealing, right? Nobody wants to think about, these are my habits, right? But this is ultimately what will continue keeping you in the game long term and powering you through that and making sure that you achieve consistent long-term success, because that's what it's ultimately all about. You're not going to learn game in 1 month. You're not going to learn game in 6 months even, right? A year, maybe, if you dedicate yourself many, many hours in that year, or 2 or 4. I don't think I've ever seen somebody get. I've seen people make massive, massive improvements within a year. But I don't think I've ever seen somebody get to like serious mastery in under like 2 years. I would say 2 years is like the bare minimum, and then you would have to be going out like a madman, like basically obsessed, in order to get really good in 2 years. And in 4 years, it would be a little bit more reasonable in terms of. And when I mean obsessed, I mean like more than a full-time job, like every day, 8 hours a day, basically, would be what I mean by obsessed. And then if you go out every day, 8 hours a day, yeah, you can get good in 2 years. And if you go out every day, 4 hours a day, well, okay, yeah, for 4 years, right? It's basic kind of math, something like that, right? So, so that's kind of what it's like. And if it's going to be a longer thing, right? If you're not willing to put in that amount of time, right? Then that's fine. I understand. Like, obviously everybody has their own pursuits. There's health, there's business, there's lots of other things in this world to enjoy, right? But you need to have those habits and think about long-term growth. Don't think about short-term highs and anything that might be achieved that might make you feel good in the very, very short term. So you have to really think about bringing up the baseline of your action in terms of what the standard that you will accept for yourself, and push it and push it higher and higher, right? Well, I've not Justin from Sapporo liking the color of her shirt. Thank you, brother. This was courtesy of Modern Life Dating. What a G and what a gentleman. I hope his YouTube comes back up soon. It seems like he's on. I think he's on Twitch recently. Move the mic a bit aside from your mouth. All right, cheers. Yeah. Once again, sorry for the setup, guys. I know this is really shitty. This was a very, very spontaneous thought. I have a girl who's on a call for about an hour, so I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go live and speak some thoughts about momentum. And yeah, and I do like I said, literally, there's a DSLR right here, and I have a good mic somewhere here. I just I need to unpack it all, but better any action than perfect action, and it's exactly the same, obviously, with game. So yeah, so habit. That's pretty much really the only point right now. Accepting questions, yes. Throw any question in the chat, any question you want. That's really the main point. Is I've realized over time, when I first, as a coach, my evolution has also happened in the same way, where it's like when at first I got really good at game, and then I was like, well, because I'm good, I can coach people, and that was sort of true. But at the beginning, I would say, looking back now, that my initial coaching was not very good. I think I can safely say that now, um, because the fact is that you have a lens with which you view the world, right? I have my own lens with which I view the world, right? And that's colored by the biases of my own upbringing and everything, right? And other people have their own lenses, right? And sometimes my lens is similar to other people's lenses, right? So when I was beginning as a coach, the first maybe 3 or 4 years as a coach, it was very, very easy to teach people who had a similar lens as I had, right? And for those kind of people, my message would get through very, very clearly, and they would improve very quickly, right? And for everybody else, they would get some sort of muted, dull kind of interpretation of it, right? Because I wasn't understanding necessarily their personal background and traumas and history and whatnot, right? So one of the things that's really changed in the past, I would say, I don't know, 5 years of coaching is I've gotten a lot better at determining the particular peculiarities of that individual guy and his upbringing, his traumas, his mental, neuroses or beliefs or patterns, good and bad, right? His strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. And I'm actually in the process of creating a product which essentially a test, essentially, right? Which will help diagnose people, and this is kind of the accumulation of about 10 years of 9.5 years of coaching, where I've come and basically understood the psychology of many different kinds of guys very deeply and intimately over the course of either a weekend, even a few hours, or longer, 3 months, 6 months of coaching them. Right, I've gotten to know them quite deeply. In some cases, lived with them, and I've found several patterns or several types of guys, right? And in those different types of guys, in other words, there's several different, not just my lens, right? And my lens would be like, I guess if I had to describe it, it would be growing up somewhat introverted, pretty intellectual, pretty quiet overall, right? And I've overcome all those things, right? And there's lots more to unpack there, but it's quite different from a lot of these other people out there who also want to learn game and improve a game. But so one of the main things which I have gotten really, really good at over the last 5 years, which I was not good at in the first 4.5 or so years of coaching, was understanding on a deep level what sort of background these individual guys are coming from, and how to in other words, how to change or tune what I'm saying to in a way that they will understand it, right? To the individual guy, right? Because as much as I would like to believe that you can just say one thing and everybody will understand it how you meant it, right? That's just not the case, right? So you do have to be able to tweak your message to the audience, and it gets the fidelity gets much higher the more individual the communication. So if you're speaking one-on-one, you can tailor it a lot more, right? Whereas if you're speaking to obviously like a crowd of people, you can't really tailor it that much at all, um, unless that crowd is self-selected in a certain way, right? Depending on the type of girl in Japan, do you switch the amount of English Japanese you use and are open with in cold approach? Well, given what I just said, I think you probably know the answer to that. And the answer, yeah, of course, is yes. There's some types of girls who basically, if you speak English, they will get extremely embarrassed and run away, right? And there's other type of girls who, if you speak Japanese, they will get weirded out and also run away. So yeah, you do have to basically be able to understand which way. Overall, I think for the most part you're more safe just speaking in Japanese, but there are definitely a certain demographic of girls who will not respond well if you speak Japanese to them. So that's always good to keep in the back of your mind. Yeah. All right, guys. This is just getting myself back in the vibe, back in the groove of doing live streams. So next time you see me, there will be a DSLR camera. Picture quality will be much better. Audio quality will be much better. It will start off promptly, and it will be announced ahead of time. This was just in some ways a test, and in some ways a spark of inspiration. But I do hope to see you guys pretty soon. For now, though, thank you guys for